March 18th, 1945. Neuburg Airfield, northern Germany. The wind moves first, cold, thin, carrying the smell of damp earth, gasoline, and scorched metal across a silent concrete runway. The war, for this stretch of land at least, has already passed by. Lieutenant Robert J. Walker, 24, farm boy from Springfield, Ohio, steps carefully across broken glass and scattered shell casings. His leather boots crunch softly with each step. He is an intelligence officer now, Air Technical Service Command. But 2 months ago, he was flying escort missions over the Ruhr, watching friends vanish in fire. Ahead of him, alone beneath a gray sky, sits the aircraft that haunted those missions. Focke-Wulf Fw 190A8. Its nose points toward the empty horizon like a tired predator. The black and white Balkenkreuz still stains the fuselage. Fresh bullet holes freckles the wing roots and engine cowling. The right main landing gear is partially collapsed from a belly landing just hours earlier. Oil weeps from the BMW 801 radial engine in slow, dark tears. Walker stops 10 feet away. For years, this machine had hunted his kind. He remembers the first time he saw one. High above Bremen, a flash of gray slicing through a formation of B-17s like a butcher's blade. The Fw-190 wasn't graceful like the Messerschmitt 109. It was brutal, wide, thick, built to absorb punishment and return it in close, savage bursts of cannon fire. Now it is grounded, silent, stripped of its terror. 3 hours earlier, its pilot, Feldwebel Erich Vollmer, 18 months at the front, 18 confirmed kills, had tried to flee ahead of the advancing American armor. His fuel gauges were lies. His luck had finally run out. Walker circles the aircraft slowly, gloved fingers trailing just short of the metal skin. Armament. 2 13mm MG 131 machine guns above the cowling. 4 20mm MG 151 cannons in the wings. Enough firepower to tear a bomber apart in seconds. Armor, 80mm behind the pilot's seat. The Fw-190's elevator cables routed low and protected. Radial engine acting as a shield as much as a power plant. The cockpit canopy is cracked. Inside, the vacant seat smells of sweat, cordite, and fear baked into leather. Vollmer survived the landing. He did not survive the American patrol that found him running across an open field. Walker exhales slowly. The war is ending. But the hunt is changing. The new war begins. By dawn the next morning, trucks arrive. Then cranes, then teams of American mechanics wearing cold weather jackets and subdued grins. The Fw-190 is no longer an enemy aircraft. It is property. Walker oversees the first inspection. Panels come off. Ammunition belts are removed link by link. The radial engine is rotated by hand, each compression stroke clicking with stubborn German precision. One mechanic laughs quietly. Hell of a machine. Walker doesn't disagree. Inside a temporary hangar, he reads captured documents pulled from a nearby Luftwaffe command post, maintenance logs, pilot notes, last-minute tactical adjustments. The handwriting grows sloppier toward the end. Shorter service intervals, overboost warnings ignored. Desperation made these machines dangerous and fragile. By April, 3 flyable Fw-190s have been ferried to a secret evaluation base in France, guarded like stolen gold. The Americans already have Messerschmitts. They've already flown Japanese Zeros. But this aircraft, the Fw-190, this is different. This is the Luftwaffe's executioner. Across the ocean, May 1945, Freeman Field, Indiana. The captured Fw-190 rolls onto an American runway for the first time. Its German camouflage has been overpainted with stark U.S. stars and bars, but the shape is unmistakable. Short wings, broad stance, thick nose like a clenched fist. Test pilot Major Thomas Reynolds, age 31, combat veteran from North Carolina, climbs into the cockpit. He fought these machines over France. He buried 2 friends because of them. Now, he will fly one. The BMW 801 coughs, smokes, then roars to life with a deep, uneven thunder. The vibration shakes the canopy like a living thing. Reynolds advances the throttle. The FW-190 surges forward, faster than he expects. Torque pulls left. He corrects. Airspeed climbs, 120, 130, 150, lift. The enemy is airborne again. In the air, the truth reveals itself. The roll rate is violent, nearly unmatched. The control response is brutal, immediate, unforgiving. At low altitude, it accelerates like a predator released from a cage. At high altitude, it begins to fade, gasping where Mustangs thrive. Reynolds lands flushed and shaken. Over the next 6 months, Americans probe every strength and flaw. They learn how the radial engine soaks up bullets. They learn how the wide-track landing gear makes ground handling forgiving. They learn exactly how deadly the nose-mounted cannons truly were inside 400 yards. The war may be over, but the lessons are just beginning. The Soviet shadow. While Americans test their prize in daylight, the Soviets work in shadow. Across eastern Germany, Red Army units seize entire Luftwaffe depots. Crates of unfinished FW-190 parts vanish east. Engineers dismantle airframes down to rivets, blueprints labeled in Cyrillic. For Moscow, the aircraft isn't a trophy. It is raw material. The FW-190's cooling system influences future Soviet radial fighters. Its cannon layout informs later attack aircraft. The West studies it openly. The East absorbs it silently. The world fractures, and the FW-190 teaches both sides. France rebuilds the killer. In 1946, the sound of F-190 engines returns over Europe, but under a new flag. In shattered French factories, abandoned German jigs are dusted off. Captured airframes become the Essenkak and Seat 900, rebuilt with French hands using German bones. Former resistance fighters now wrench on former Nazi machines. French pilots fly them against colonial insurgents in Indochina. The aircraft that once defended Hitler's skies now drops ordnance for France's collapsing empire. History twists the blade. The ghost of Kurt Tank. All the while, one man is missing. Kurt Tank. The architect of the FW-190 vanishes into the chaos of collapse. By 1947, he appears in Argentina. By the 1950s, he is designing jet fighters across continents, his philosophy living on in swept wings and armored cockpits. The man disappears. The ideas endure. A predator without a war. By the early 1950s, most FW-190s are scrap, melted into railroads and rebar. A few survive in obscure service. One nation flies them longer than any other. Turkey, neutral through most of the war, quiet, patient. Their FW-190s remain on strength into the mid-1950s, outdated but stubborn. Old predators flying training circuits beneath new jet-age contrails. Then, one by one, they too fall silent. The last sound. Decades later, inside a quiet American hangar, a modern mechanic tightens a bolt on an airframe 70 years old. Fresh paint gleams over ancient metal. The propeller turns. The engine coughs. Then the thunder returns. The enemy flies again. But now only for memory. Robert Walker never saw another FW-190 after 1945. He lived to old age, farming quiet Ohio fields. But at night, when distant thunder rolled across flat land, He remembered the sound of that radial engine idling on a dead German airfield, a predator that survived the war by becoming history. June 2nd, 1945. Freeman Army Airfield, Indiana. 09:14 hours. Heat ripples across the runway like liquid glass. The sky is empty except for one impossible shape. Short wings, thick radial nose, blunt German aggression wearing American paint. The FW-190 lines up for a high-speed gunnery evaluation. Major Thomas Reynolds tightens his harness. Sweat slides down his spine beneath the parachute pack. He has flown Mustangs, Thunderbolts, Lightnings, but none of them vibrate like this. The BMW 801 engine shudders with contained violence, 18 cylinders beating like an iron heart. Throttle forward. The aircraft lunges. Acceleration slams him into the seat. The tail lifts. Torque claws left. He corrects. The airspeed needle snaps upward. 140, 160, 180. Reynolds pulls. The FW-190 rips off the runway as if thrown by an invisible giant. In the air, the airplane feels alive in a way American fighters do not. Heavy on the stick, dense, violent in response. At 3,000 feet, he banks hard left and right, testing the legendary roll rate. The horizon whips around the canopy in savage arcs. He laughs once, sharp and disbelieving. Now he understands how it killed so many. Test of teeth. Out over the gunnery range, Reynolds arms the weapon system. 2 cowling-mounted 13mm MG-131s, 4 wing-root 20mm MG-151 20 cannons, 6 guns, 1 trigger. He lines up on a fabric target dragged behind a B-25. The range closes fast. 900 yards, 700, 500. Now, the trigger breaks. The FW-190 shudders as if struck by a hammer. Recoil slams through the fuselage. Tracer streams cross and converge like burning needles. The target disintegrates in a heartbeat, fabric, wood, and steel exploding into vapor. Reynolds eases off the trigger, breathing hard. The gun camera confirms what Luftwaffe pilots always knew. Inside 400 yards, nothing survived. The brawler's weakness. At 20,000 feet, the truth changes. Reynolds pushes the 190 upward in a power climb. The BMW engine growls, straining against thinning air. Manifold pressure drops. The once fearsome acceleration fades. A P-51D Mustang joins him in a parallel climb. The Mustang pulls ahead. At altitude, the Predator gasps. Engineers take notes. Charts fill with numbers. The legend becomes data. The FW-190 is lethal, low and fast. Clumsy, high and thin. It was never meant to dance in heaven. It was built to butcher at treetop height. The jet age approaches. By the end of 1945, jet engines thunder over the same runways. The Me-262 is already obsolete. The FW-190 belongs to yesterday's war in a world racing toward tomorrow. But the lessons extracted from its bones are priceless. American designers learn from its armor philosophy, wide-track landing gear, radial survivability, gun concentration doctrine. Future fighters become tougher because this one taught them how to kill, eastward into steel and silence. While Freeman Field dissects its prize publicly, entire trainloads of FW-190s vanish behind Soviet lines. In cold, dimly lit halls outside Moscow, engineers strip German fighters naked. They measure. Wing spars, cooling ducts, hydraulic routing, cannon mounting geometry. No film crews, no press, only rulers, calipers, and silence. Soviet attack aircraft, born in the late 1940s, will carry the same violent DNA, low-level punishment machines built to live through fire. The FW-190 never flies in red stars, but its shadow does. France and the Ghosts of 1940, January 1947. Toulouse, France. Inside a hangar still scarred by Allied bombing, the first NC-900 rolls forward. It looks like a FW-190, because it is. Captured airframes, unfinished components, scavenged engines, all fused together under French hands. The workers are men who once sabotaged German production lines. Now they complete them. One mechanic, Jean Moreau, age 38, former resistance courier, tightens a panel and stares at the Balkenkreuz shadow still faint beneath paint. 2 years ago, this machine hunted him. Now it belongs to France. He feels no triumph, only exhaustion. Back to war. In Indochina, French NC-900s roar over jungle canopy. The same cannons that once shredded B-17s now strafe tree lines and riverbanks. The same armor that once defied Mustangs now absorbs rifle fire from below. The FW-190 fights again, under a different flag, for a collapsing empire, in a war no one at Neuberg Airfield could have imagined. The creator's flight wild. His creation is torn apart, copied, and repurposed. Kurt Tank flees across oceans. By 1948, he is in Argentina, welcomed not as a war criminal, but as a genius. He sketches jet fighters with the same ruthless clarity that birthed the FW-190. His philosophy does not change. Speed, firepower, survivability. The world learns from the enemy's architect, over and over again. The last combat circuits. By the mid-1950s, only one nation still whispers the FW-190's name into maintenance logs. Turkey. Neutral through the storm. Careful, patient. Their 190s patrol borders, not front lines. Their pilots train for a war that never comes. Young Turkish cadets learn to fly in the cockpit of a machine born for hell. Each year, parts become harder to find. Each year, the jet age grows louder. Then one day, the logbooks end. The Predator is finally grounded. From killer to artifact. In the decades that follow, rust claims most survivors. Wings collapse, engines seize, jungles swallow, deserts bleach, but a handful escape oblivion. Private collectors, warbirds, restoration crews who treat twisted aluminum like sacred text. They rebuild the FW-190 bolt by bolt, not as a weapon, but as a warning, not as a killer, but as memory-given wings. The last flight. On a modern air show runway, a restored FW-190 idles before thousands of silent spectators. The engine ignites with the same feral thunder. Smoke rolls. The past breathes again. Some in the crowd cheer, some grow quiet. Because for a few veterans in folding chairs at the far edge of the field, the sound does not mean nostalgia. It means survival. It means the friend who never came home from 8 o'clock high. The FW-190 lifts into blue sky once more, no longer the king of predators. Only the last living echo of a war that never truly ended. August 14th, 1953. A Timizgut Air Base, Ankara, Turkey. The morning heat already clings to the concrete like a second skin. Dust from the Anatolian plain drifts across the runway in slow, lazy curtains. At the far end of the field, beneath the rising shimmer, a line of aging fighters waits in patient silence. Short wings, broad shoulders, blunt radial noses. Focke-Wulf Fw 190A3s. Captain Kemal Yildirim, age 26, son of a railway engineer from Izmir, walks the line with his flight helmet tucked under one arm. He has never fired a shot in anger. Yet every time he looks at these aircraft, he feels like he's touching a relic pulled straight from hell. These machines were born for slaughter, and Turkey is the last country on Earth still flying them. Old predators in a new sky. The mechanic team swarms Kemal's aircraft. Turkish hands tighten German bolts. Fuel hoses snake from modern trucks into tanks designed for a dead Reich. The airplane carries no swastika now, only the red and white star and crescent. But the bones beneath the paint are unmistakable. The BMW 801 coughs into life. Thick gray smoke belches from the exhaust collector ring. The engine stutters, catches, then surges into its familiar, uneven thunder, 18 cylinders beating like a buried war drum. Kemal climbs into the cockpit. Leather seat, German gauges, altitude in meters, airspeed in kilometers per hour. A foreign machine that feels strangely alive. Tower clearance, throttle forward. The FW-90 rumbles, builds speed, and lifts into a sky filled with jet contrails from powers Turkey can only watch, not yet match. The Iron Curtain hardens to the north. The Cold War sharpens its teeth. And beneath those future warpaths, yesterday's predator still flies. Training for a war that never comes. Kemal's mission is a simple patrol. Border reconnaissance, radio checks, formation work. The FW-90 is no longer allowed live ammunition. The cannons are empty mouths, sealed and silent. But the aircraft still teaches him. He rolls into a steep left turn, feeling the same brutal roll rate that once cut through bomber formations. He pushes low and fast over dry farmland, skimming ridgelines at treetop height. The airplane still feels deadly, even with its teeth removed. But each month it becomes harder to keep them alive. Cracked seals, worn pistons, obsolete compatibility. Turkey scavenges parts from grounded airframes to keep others flying. One aircraft dies so another can breathe. The Predator is now feeding on its own. The jet age passes it by. By 1956, sleek F-84 Thunderjets roar into Turkish inventory, silver arrows of the New World, screaming past the lumbering FW-90s on the same runways. Kemal watches one climb nearly vertical, disappearing into sound and vapor. He looks back at his fighter, thick wings, straight lines, propeller blur. The gap between eras is no longer measured in years. It is measured in heartbeats. The final landing. October 1958, the order arrives without ceremony. FW-190 fleet to be retired from active service. No parade, no speeches, no photographs, just a quiet end. Kemal flies one last sortie. A familiar circuit, a final approach. The old radial engine vibrates through the stick like a heartbeat he has memorized. Touchdown. The tires chirp once, then roll. When he shuts the engine down, the propeller comes to rest with one blade pointing skyward, as if reaching back toward the past. He climbs out slowly, pats the fuselage once, and walks away. The last operational FW-190 in the world has just completed its final military flight. Scrap, silence, and survival. Across the globe, most of its surviving sisters fare worse. Crushed, melted, erased. Airfields become highways. Hangars become warehouses. The war fades into architecture and rust. But a few airframes escape the furnace. One in England, dragged from a forest. One in America, stripped of parts and forgotten in a hangar. One in France, recovered piece by piece from a crash site. One in Russia, entombed in mud for half a century. Each carries scars, bullet holes sealed with memory, fire damage left visible beneath new paint like ghost wounds. And slowly, the restorers begin their work. Rebuilding a ghost. In a modern hangar in the United States, fluorescent lights hum over an aluminum skeleton suspended in steel frames. It barely resembles an aircraft now, just ribs, spars, and empty spaces. FW-190A5, work number unknown. The restoration chief, Mark Ellison, 61, lifelong Warbird engineer, has never fired a shot in war. But he treats this machine with the reverence of a battlefield grave. Every rivet is matched by serial batch. Every cable routed exactly as wartime engineering intended. Even the hydraulic lines mimic original bends and stress points. The BMW 801 is rebuilt cylinder by cylinder, scavenged from half a dozen dead engines across continents. Pistons are custom machined. Magnetos rebuilt by hands that learned their trade in the jet age. Years pass. Millions of dollars disappear. The past slowly takes shape again. The sound that breaks the world. Open spring, 2012. The hangar doors roll back. Sunlight floods the fuselage. Fuel flows into the tanks. The cockpit fills again, for the first time in over 60 years. Ellison signals. The starter whines. The propeller turns once, twice. The engine coughs. Then, boom! The BMW 801 detonates into life in a sheet of smoke and thunder that shakes dust from the rafters. 18 cylinders hammer in imperfect, violent harmony. People in the crowd scream without meaning to. Veterans grip the fence. Because that sound does not belong to museums. That sound belongs to death from the sun. The past takes the sky again. The restored Fw-190 taxis forward, paint gleaming in wartime gray. The pilot advances the throttle, cautiously now, respectfully. Acceleration builds. The tail lifts. The Predator rises. For a moment, just a moment, 1944 exists again. Not in hatred, not in fire, only in motion. But some men on the ground are crying, not because it is beautiful, but because it reminds them what beauty once destroyed. Memory with wings. The enemy's weapon has become a storyteller. It no longer hunts. It testifies. In air shows across the world, the Fw-190 flies alongside Mustangs and Spitfires, former killers sharing the same sky, finally at peace. Children point. Veterans fall silent. Historians argue. And the machine simply flies, unchanged in shape, forever changed in meaning. The Predator's final transformation. What once existed only to kill is now guarded so it can never be forgotten. Its metal no longer absorbs bullets. It absorbs memory. The Fw-190, once the terror of bomber crews, executor of the Eastern Front, butcher of low-altitude skies, now survives as a living warning. Not of German power, not of Allied victory, but of how quickly genius becomes a weapon. And how slowly the echoes of that weapon ever truly fade. June 6, 2019. Chino, California. Plains of Fame Air Museum. The sun beats down on polished aluminum and faded camouflage. Heat ripples above the runway. Spectators pack the fences. Families, children on shoulders. Camera lenses glittering like dragonfly eyes. Among them stands an old man in a folding chair. Staff Sergeant Harold Red Baines, 94 years old, former B-17 tail gunner. Bremen, Berlin, Schweinfurt. His hands tremble in his lap, not from age, from memory. A distant engine cough rolls across the field. Once, twice. Then the sound hits his chest like a physical blow. BMW 801. His breath stops. The same sound that once climbed through freezing oxygen masks at 25,000 feet. The same sound that once announced death from below and behind. The same sound that once sent red tracers through aluminum and flesh in 2-second bursts. The Fw-190 taxis into view, painted as it once was in 1944. Gray, scarred, beautiful, The crowd cheers. Red does not. The view from the target. For a moment, the museum vanishes. He's back inside the ball turret. January 1944, 40 DGF. Frost on his lashes. A dark shape knifes up from the clouds beneath him. Radial nose, wide wings, Focke-Wulf. Too close, too fast. The guns jam. The burst never comes. The German cannons do. The memory slams shut as the museum's loudspeaker crackles to life. Ladies and gentlemen, the Focke-Wulf Fw 90. Applause ripples. Red exhales slowly. The boy beside him grins in pure wonder. 2 generations. 1 sound. 2 completely different wars. The final meaning of the Predator. When the Fw-190 lifts off once more, the crowd roars. The aircraft climbs in a wide, deliberate arc. No violence in it now. No targets. No enemy. Only trust. Trust in engineers. Trust in history. Trust that the machine will never again be asked to do what it was built for. The Predator has been defanged not by engines or guns, but by time. Across the world, the same sound. In England, in Germany, in France. Restored Fw-190s fly under strict limits. No combat loads, no emergency overboosts. Oil temperature watched like a heartbeat. Pilots are chosen not for aggression, but discipline. Because one mistake in a 70-year-old war machine does not end a mission. It ends a memory. Kurt Tank's true legacy. When Kurt Tank dies in 1983, far from Germany, his obituary lists jet fighters, swept wings, and test programs. But history knows something simpler. He built a machine so brutally effective that every nation that touched it learned from it. The Americans learned how to harden fighters. The Soviets learned how to punish the ground. The French learned how war machines outlive flags. The Turks learned how even killers can become teachers. And the world learned that innovation does not care which uniform it wears. From weapon to witness. The Fw-190 never apologized for what it was. It only endured long enough to be understood. What once reduced bomber crews to burning spirals. What once ruled low-altitude skies like a scythe. What once terrified pilots who only saw its nose for half a second before dying, now flies low passes for children who have never heard a gun fired in anger. The terror did not vanish. It transformed. The last look back. As the Fw-190 makes its final pass over the museum, Red Baines rises slowly from his chair. His knees protest. His hand shakes as he lifts it in a steady, silent salute. The plane rolls its wings, not in victory, in acknowledgement. 2 survivors, man and machine, passing each other at the far edge of time. What happened to the Focke-Wulf Fw? After World War II? It was studied, copied, rebuilt, repurposed, retired, scrapped, resurrected. It crossed enemies, ideologies, oceans, and eras. It outlived the men who cursed its name. It outlived the nation that created it. And somehow, it outlived the war itself. The final truth. The Fw-190 was never just an airplane. It was fear given wings. It was genius welded into violence. It was the sky's most efficient executioner. And now, it is proof. Proof that even the deadliest things ever built by human hands can be transformed into memory, if the world survives long enough to remember. Thanks for joining us on this journey through one of history's incredible survival stories. If you found it compelling, give it a like and share it with someone who appreciates these tales of courage. And don't forget to subscribe for